Hello, everyone. With me today is Bobby Newman and Bobby Rogers. They have partnered to shed a light on how COVID has affected our special needs population. Bobby Newman is a world-renowned psychologist and behavior analyst and author of many publications, including books such as Move with a Purpose and What the Function. Bobby Rogers is a parent advocate, nonprofit founder, and director of Proud Moments Therapy in Syracuse, New York. Today, they will be interviewing Dr. Erik Jacobson and Dr. Mara Vanderzell. Dr. Erik Jacobson is chief psychologist for Upstate Cerebral Palsy, and Dr. Mara Vanderzell is a clinical psychologist and senior behavior analyst with Upstate Cerebral Palsy and the Tradewinds Education Center. Dr. Newman, why don't you begin?
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for being here. I'm very excited about today's talk because in our prior talks, we have had a lot of discussions about things that are happening in the facilities, and we've had them from the perspective of the families and the parents. Today, I'm very excited that we're going to be able to get kind of an inside picture of the impact of COVID and what it's meant for some of the staffing decisions, some of these decisions in terms of outing, students going out, coming back, the whole adjustment to live instruction, remote instruction, PPE usage. This is something which I think we really need to get into to get that inside perspective. So I'm very excited to have Mara and Erik, Dr. Vanderzell and Dr. Jacobson with us. And in fact, to get us started, if I could, Dr. Vanderzell, first you and then Dr. Jacobson, can you describe a little bit of your duties? We know your title now, but can you tell us a little bit about what you are responsible for in terms of the functioning of the facilities?
Sure. I am, as Leanne mentioned, a clinical psychologist and a board certified behavior analyst. And I've been working in the field of developmental disabilities for a little over 20 years. I'm currently overseeing all of our behavior analytic programming in our Tradewinds Education Center, which is located in Rome, New York, central New York. And here we have both day and residential students, approximately 50 of them that we serve, 36 of them which live on our campus, and the remaining are bused in from surrounding districts. So I oversee a group of clinicians who oversee the programming in the classrooms to not only foster skill acquisition, but also problem behavior reduction programs that are really focused in on functional life skills, skills that are going to impact quality of life and independence for the students that we serve.
If ever there was a time that that was going to be necessary, it is now. That's one of the things that we have spoken of repeatedly, that this crisis of the pandemic has really led us to have to look at what are the crucial skills that people really need in their everyday lives. When so many of the supports that so many people had were kind of taken away, either gradually or quite abruptly in certain cases, it really highlighted where I think some of the needs are in terms of the skills that people need to have. So this approach in terms of what the functional life skills is something very crucial to address. So again, I am all the more excited to have you here today. Dr. Jacobson, Erik, can you tell us a little bit about your responsibilities at the organization?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was a great point that you just made, Bobby, regarding those health and safety skills that are necessary to kind of this past year that really brought to life skills that we never thought we were going to have to work on related to masks in particular, but also related to social distancing, hand washing, which has always been something that we've worked on, but at a different level during the past year. So I'm the chief psychologist at Upstate Cerebral Palsy. As you mentioned, we have around 315 individuals that live in our programs residentially. So that became quite apparent this year. Because we are a 24/7 facility, we have essential workers that are here ensuring the safety of the individuals that are in our program throughout this time. We have 72 kids that live with us residentially, and the rest of those individuals out of that 315 are adults in our adult residential programs. My role is really to oversee a clinical department of around 35 individuals that are in that department. During the past year, we've expanded our BCBA program that will have 26 at this point BCBAs that will be in our program. And that's been something that we've taken on during the past 2 years, where we just started that at the end of 2018 to hire BCBAs and move more into an analytic model. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about what we do, particularly related to our BCBAs and our model coming up, but that's primarily my work, in addition to a lot of the new work that we've been doing in our program related to our, what we like to call our essential skills teaching model. And it incorporates really some of the best of today's ABA, including the work of Greg Hanley and Pat McGreevy and Troy Fry, in an integrated model that we can both address challenging behaviors that occur in program, but as well as give the students and adults that we work with essential skills that are going to improve the quality of their life. So that's really taken up the bulk of my time. That was an initiative that we went into in 2020. So in the midst of managing a pandemic, we were also managing a pretty big quality improvement initiative with a lot of success along the way.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. It sounds like it's obviously a very massive undertaking. And I'm really impressed to hear about all the training. I know that's a very commonly stated point, that as our students get older and as they enter into adult services, there's a concern about, is staff training ongoing? Are they receiving the intensity of instruction that they received when they were younger? Sometimes the funding isn't there to have the same staffing ratio. Okay, now what? Have they been prepared for this new staffing ratio? Are the staff being trained? You mentioned some of the top people in our field. I would be remiss if I didn't mention one, I think it's funny, joke. Leanne had mentioned my book, What the Function, which I have with my wife and Olivia Tsunami and Jenica Nill. It's no longer on Amazon. I guess they took it down. They found it in poor taste. But the first review of the book was that Bobby Newman has written a new book by Greg Hanley, which I thought was a pretty funny review. And we obviously quoted from Greg a lot. We really found his work that powerful, but I thought that was a pretty funny review, that I had just written a new book by Greg Hanley.
Absolutely. You know what? He's been a game changer in my professional life, really gave me a sense of agency that we could move in a new direction, particularly in central New York, where BCBAs are not around. And so we really looked to him to guide us down this new path for what we're able to do. So yeah, I couldn't agree more about Greg and quoting him and having him be the fuel to kind of move this new ABA model into our program.
That's awesome. Now, forgive me with the two of you. I'm going to leave it open to who wants to answer what, because I don't want to throw something at you. So as I put out the questions, feel free to say I'll take that one or what have you. I want to try to talk about a little bit of chronology here. We've talked in some of our other interviews about how this all hit us by surprise, and then we had to adjust. At first, yes, we heard of it. It was serious. It wasn't serious. We do need to wear masks. We don't need to wear masks. Okay, now it's going to be 2 weeks to flatten the curve. We're 10 months into 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And again, I think the impact kind of snuck up on some of us, and I'm sure you remember it, but I remember my days of working with residences, and I just had 1 or 2 apartments I had to deal with, nothing like the scale that you had to deal with in terms of just the sheer logistics that what you're doing. But I remember just staffing at that point, and my first thought is, as people had to now start coming, going, not going, how did you adjust, and what did it mean for the changes in operation in terms of just even having your staff there to provide the necessary services?
I guess I can start. I think it was, for us in Central New York, we kind of just got an email on a Friday. And actually Greg was in town on a visit with us. And we all, as we're in the meeting, we're each getting emails and more emails and more emails about just a complete shutdown. Schools were closing on a Friday afternoon. And so we had little time to prepare for Monday morning, at least on the school side, of what that was going to look like. We didn't hear of closures. We didn't hear of a temporary closure. Once it was closed, then they said, okay, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month. I think the first kind of feeling from staff, at least on the school side, was, wait, I work in a school. Our schools are all closed. So there's no kids, right? I don't have to go to work. I can stay safe with my family. And then realizing, no, actually we are working. We are essential workers. We have kids that reside with us that need us to take care of them. And so I think there was a very quick and pressured mind shift for the staff to be thrust into that role, which they just previously saw themselves as school employees, to now being essential workers. They didn't see themselves like a typical essential worker in a hospital or a nursing home or things like that. So I think that was a quick shift in their mindset that we had to adapt to and accommodate and support and understand and provide empathy toward. And then it also shifted what we were doing with the students. There was a quick shift to PPE and safety measures and social distancing and reducing class sizes. And so there was a lot of quick shifts that we've changed over time as this pandemic has gone on. And maybe Erik can speak more to that.
Yeah, we have addressed and note that there were a lot of very quick, very rapid changes. And again, speaking in generalities, so many of our students, say diagnosed on the autism spectrum, can have difficulty with certain transitions, can be very routine based, anxiety and again, just disruptions and things I've mentioned in some of our other interviews, like some people have extreme food selectivity, and then hoarders wound up buying all the Cheerios, and now he doesn't have anything to eat for breakfast because somebody bought up all the Cheerios, and now what? So this sudden change, and again, just the uncertainty of it, something else that we've mentioned before is if there was a particular well-defined goal line, end zone, we're only going to be this long, we could probably manage a little bit better than this kind of nebulous, well, we'll see as it develops and we're not sure where it's going. So it's, again, just been a very big adjustment for everyone. I'm very interested in that shift that you mentioned because people now seeing themselves as essential workers. I remember that among my staff as well. Are we essential workers? Of course you are. You have always been. There's no question in my mind that you're an essential worker. And I wish you would think of yourself that way. One of the founders of my organization, Proud Moments, when we huddled up with all of our BCBAs when it became obvious that we were going to have to do a great deal through telehealth, said, you know what? You are the ventilator for some of these families and some of these kids. You're the only services they're going to receive right now, and you're the only thing maintaining anybody's sanity. She's not one to think in song lyrics like I am, but the first thing that hit me was Under Pressure from Queen, and insanity laughs under pressure, we're cracking. And luckily nobody cracked, but the pressure was suddenly enormous. And again, that shift to thinking of yourself as an essential worker and everything that comes along with it. I was on the one hand glad because I saw some people taking a great deal of pride, and I think realizing just how important what they do is, and they always should have realized it, but maybe they didn't. But I was glad to see that. This shift though, now logistically speaking, people would go home from your residences, they would, again, be transitioning back and forth, and now that was no longer happening. How did that make an impact on both, the students and the staff?
Yeah, certainly that made a huge impact. I think, student, staff, and parents, I think it was the challenge all around was like, where there was a lot of anxiety in the world, but certainly in our program where things changed. Students certainly being used to, or adults that we support, being used to a certain schedule that got changed, creating some anxiety, but also for many of the individuals that live with us, they were used to going to see their parents on the weekends. And that shifted, and that we didn't always have the information to give to parents of when that's going to be lifted. I think it was all in this idea of we need to protect people. We're essential for the protection and the safety of the individuals that we support. But it made for tough decisions around that, because you're trying to social distance, and particularly in congregate settings where you're trying to limit that virus getting into that setting. For our school campuses, where you have a lot of individuals in a tight location, that you're trying to avoid that impacting a lot of individuals at once. So there was a lot of anxiety that needed to be managed, that were coming back to staff to be able to manage that. The neat thing with it, and Mara already kind of expressed this, was on March 12th and 13th, Greg Hanley was here to start what was going to be our universal protocol initiative. And this was going to be our base, our foundation for the way that we were going to work and work differently, very much in line with his white paper related to today's ABA, is that we were going to work on having better relationships with the individuals that we support and that we work with. We weren't going to be coming from a authoritarian, dominating director type role, but more of how do we create shared enjoyment? How do we build rapport? How do we continue to make things safe? What we like to call, and you've heard Greg call it before, is happy, relaxed, and engaged. And how do you create this happy, relaxed, and engaged environment? And I tell you what, you couldn't have got a better mantra this year of how do you create a happy, relaxed, engaged environment in the midst of managing a lot of anxiety. And it was such a cool initiative in a lot of ways, is because we could say, let's relax some of these things. Let's build rapport. We know everyone's anxious. We know our staff are anxious. We know our students are anxious, but let's just work on creating more harmony with the way that we're going to do this. Slow down. Don't feel like you need to work that schedule. Follow the child's lead if they're asking to do something. Engage in a shared activity. Those were the areas that were part of that initiative, and that really just came at a awesome time, is because that's what we needed to serve up to our staff, is to say, you know what, let's get you focused on happy, relaxed, and engaged, because that's going to help us through this. In our school, it was much easier in our campuses because we have a lot of our staff together. On our adult side, it was a little slower because they're out in residences throughout central New York, which made it a challenge to coach around. And it is a new way of doing things. We were asking them to interact in ways that isn't consistent with how the field has been in developmental disabilities, particularly in residential care, that's very much built on kind of regimented schedules and kind of firm kind of limits. And we started looking at, let's look at what's essential and non-essential demands, and what are things that we can ease up, and what are things that we need to have in place to ensure that safety is there. So it was a neat time for that. And we're still kind of there, and it's on our mark for 2021. We actually just got done talking to both the board this week, gave an update, and talking to our direct service professionals about, this is what you're going to see. We're at a point in the initiative that it's out enough that we're really going at it to say, this is what you're going to see going in your program. And our BCBAs are going to be out there to help coach you through that.
That's great. That's such a change in approach. It almost reminds me of, again, I've also been doing this for a few years, shall we say, and the difference even in things like crisis intervention over the years, and watching how it has become much less of this authoritarian kind of model, and really trying to talk about it being a supportive model and providing the necessary supports for everything to move as smoothly as possible, and for everybody to be as happy and productive as possible. It really sounds like the proper evolution that we really should be having in terms of our approach. That really is, again, just so very nice to hear.
Yeah, it's spot on with that, because with our move to more BCBAs, is for some of the more complicated students and adults in our program, we're really pushing more expert-driven approach around assessment and treatment rather than expecting that from our direct service professionals. And so part of this universal protocol is Greg's idea of being able to turn off problem behavior. So early in that line, when we're seeing precursor behavior, we're looking at ways that we can reinforce it, give the child or adult what they need, and shut down the escalation that typically occurs in our environment because we do things like planned ignoring or escape extinction. And we're just getting rid of that idea and to say there's a different way to build skills that's safe, that's going to keep everybody safe. Our staff are the people that we support. And it's called universal protocol and more expert driven treatment when we need to provide that. And then once we're there and we're moving into treatment, then we're working on essential skills, including things like mass toleration that Mara's going to be able to talk about because she rocked it this year with a number of individuals in our program, where in years past, we would have said, we can never get this student to wear a mask. And using some of the same principles we used around our skills-based treatment based on Hanley, is that she was able to kind of move this stuff along with just really, really cool stuff.
You're mentioning that it triggers a memory from a good number of years ago. I remember I was at the ABA conference, I believe it was, with a number of professionals. You know, many of us are very close. And someone had just adopted a young boy, and we live in a beach community, and we talked about going swimming. And she made the mistake of saying, "Oh yeah, he won't wear water wings." And we all kind of looked at her. He won't? Where are you and who are you talking to that you're talking about this child who won't wear the water? Well, come on, we'll figure out a way. We'll teach him to really enjoy the water wings. And but it was just so funny when that sort of moment hits you. Really? That's what we said just about now? Okay, well, we're going to remember this, and I'm going to quote you back in 2021 and embarrass you if you ever watch this, you know, all these years later. But Mara, I'm sorry, I couldn't come up with a better transition. Can you tell us a little bit about the personal protection programs?
Sure. I think, first we had to do some assessment and just present masks to kids and adults and see if they had never seen them in their life. Why would they have ever worn them in the past? So we just kind of did baseline assessment, and we just encouraged them to wear them for as long as they could tolerate. But we did find a subset of our population that wouldn't tolerate that amount at all, wouldn't tolerate them in their sight, wouldn't tolerate it on their desk, wanted nothing to do with it. Wouldn't tolerate it on others. So staff wearing masks would try to take the masks off of staff because, again, Bobby is speaking to that kind of change in routine. This reminds me of a doctor's office. I don't do well at doctor's offices. So we had to start, really baseline toleration skills for a lot of kids. And what we did was we got to a happy, relaxed, engaged place with them. And we started to build on those skills very slowly. So at first it was, we're going to do this together. We would model it. We would shape it. We'd use task analysis to shape steps of mass toleration. So just tolerating it on your desk, tolerating, on one ear and hanging it for a few seconds. And then going back to the happier, relaxed, and engaged part of your day. And so we were able to build up the mass toleration skills for a number of learners who probably in years past, we would say we'd never get those guys to wear masks. And we were able to do that in both the children's side and the adult side. So, and I think that was, a big kind of eye opener for staff to say, we kind of counted that out for that student. And if we can get them to tolerate a mask, like what else is possible, right? We can get them to tolerate all sorts of things and do this in a collaborative way. So I think it was a big eye opener and gave a lot of hope and confidence to the staff that if this is possible, pretty much anything is possible.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear, and nothing reinforces success like success. Mm-hmm. So showing that was indeed possible where people thought it wasn't, boy, that must have done great for morale in terms of people, all right, let's think about this. If we could do that, let's do this. And Bobby, if I could, this sounds very similar to some of the things that you were discussing with your man, with Joe. Can I throw it back to you now to kind of expand on some of this?
Great. So first of all, I want to say to both of you that in the general community, there is a consensus around the tremendous improvements that you both are responsible for in the programs that you work with. It is visible to the community, and it reminds me of something that you wrote, Erik, when talking about the Essentials for Living conference that you spoke at recently. And I'm going to read what you wrote, and then I just want to talk to you about what I thought as a parent reading that. And then I want to get your thoughts on why you chose the words that you did. And then I have a similar quote for you, Mara, right after that. So you wrote, Erik, we are improving the way we deliver exceptional outcomes for the children and adults we support through the most innovative, safe, and dignified practices. Now, when I read that, and I read those 3 words that you chose, of all the words and the things that you could have said, you chose innovative. And my, mom brain of a child who is rather complicated, lots of severe behaviors, lots of self-injury, many challenges. Innovative brings me hope, because it makes me feel like those cookie cutter approaches that we've seen for so many years weren't going to be what was used. And, that's critical for a child like mine, and the way that he learns is to always be modifying and thinking specifically as it relates to him as an individual learner of what works. And then you said safe. And my mom brain said, oh, okay, good. You're actually going to include kids like mine because you have to think of what's safe. So you aren't just going to be choosing a particular population. My kid has a chance here. And then you chose dignified. And that's when you had me, because these are human beings first and foremost. It's not a research, program. It's not about just outcomes. It's about human beings and their dignity and their quality of life. And so when I read the choice of words, innovative, safe, and dignified, I couldn't have been more excited and hopeful. And I couldn't have had a better understanding of why you've been so successful and making such dramatic, exponential improvements in the program you're currently working with. What were you thinking when you wrote those words?
I'm thinking you need to follow me around all day, because you just made me feel very good. Yeah, this has been, for me, so I've been in the field now for over 20 years, working in the field of intellectual and developmental disabilities. Certainly for me, I feel like we are on the right path for the first time, particularly with individuals with moderate to severe disabilities. This is the work that needs to be done. This is the way that it needs to be done. It needs to be, when we talk about being dignified, we talk about it being, what Greg uses the word is televisable. That this is something, and we talked about it yesterday with our direct service professionals, that, that we want to be able to walk into any program and that you would be able to put it out on the news or show the parents through a video and to say, this is something that looks good. This is something that you would want to see in anyone's house, that it suggests that people are being taken care of and you're providing them the right treatment. And that part of this treatment that we're doing right now is a much more comprehensive model. Talked about it a little bit early, but what roles, particularly when you're talking about severe problem behavior or challenging behavior, is that you need to have innovative treatment that's going to be safe for the people that are providing it, but also to the people that are receiving that treatment, so that it moves in a direction. We're not forcing anyone. All the work that we do is all voluntary. If they want to be in the room, we try to make the work that we do as cool as possible. So it's better to be with us than be by yourself. So come with us and let's work through this treatment together. And it's going to be building on the skills of communication, toleration, and then being able to work on some skills that are really going to make a meaningful impact in their life. And I think that's when you nailed that, Bobby, is like, what I want to do is for every parent that is in our program is bring back that hope that you had for that child. I know it's terribly difficult by the time you got to make that tough decision to say my son or daughter needs to go to a residential care, is that you're a sense of losing part of that typical parenting experience, and that what you expected to happen for your child has changed. And I know by the time they get to us, there's been roller coasters and adversity that they've experienced. But once they're in our program, our goal is to say, this is an expert-driven program. We're going to provide the right treatment so that your child's going to have a different outcomes in life than what you would expect by the time that you got to us. I think the other thing that that Bobby indicated earlier was like when you go to adult programming, you don't always get the level of support that you may have in school age programming. And so our goal, and we've been talking a lot about it, are what are the essential skills that they need to be successful, whether they're at home or whether they're in a residential program, whether they work independently in a vocational experience, or whether they go to a day program. What are the skills that we need to be working on so we're not wasting time doing programming that doesn't make sense? And we did that for a long time. That's what the whole field has done. And that's where Pat and Troy have really kind of changed our mind around what do we need to work on that is essential. Certainly this year was mass toleration, right? And that may be something that we continue to work on in the future, but it has changed our viewpoint around, let's get us focused on what's important. So in our school age division now, what you're seeing is there's going to be more IEPs. I shouldn't say more. Our goal is to have all IEPs informed by the EFL versus other practices. And at times you see goals that have been in the IEP that really aren't goals that would get that student back to a less restrictive setting that would impact their lives. And that's what we want to tell the district, and we want to tell the parent when you look at the IEP is these are the things that are most important for them to have a meaningful life. And let's have a conversation around that. Even if your child has splinter skills, we are going to work on those things that are going to impact them: toleration, communication, being able to wait, being able to follow through with instruction, particularly as it relates to health and safety issues. Those are all the things that we have on our plate. So I'm jazzed. You know, it's nice to be where we're at right now, and particularly having a really an awesome senior clinical group that I work with, that I directly supervise, that are able to make these things move. And Mara's, you know, a great example of that. I haven't been able to do that in this program. I've been here for 15 years at this agency, that we've been able to move mountains within a couple of years now with having the correct people in place. And that's our BCBAs. And they're going to be the foundation for the quality improvements that we're going to be doing at the agency.
So Mara, Erik, you were just talking about how putting your child in a residential facility, there's a feeling of loss. And then you described your approach, which to me says you're saying to a parent, your child matters. And Mara, I want to kind of use that as a way to introduce something that you wrote. One of the purposes of this project is to have conversations with people about this pandemic and to demonstrate something really neat that happened during this time. What I felt like I saw was the professional community and the parent and caregiver community trying to meet each other somewhere in the middle where we could all play whatever roles we needed to play, because for the first time, everybody's roles were overlapping. People at, you know, my son's center had to play the parent role because I couldn't see him. And parents were playing the professional role. And so what I felt like we saw was this kind of let's understand each other a little bit more. And I felt like parents understood the professional side a little bit more when they had to dip themselves into that a little bit, and vice versa. So one of my primary goals in having these COVID conversations was to demonstrate to parents how alike they think to the professionals that worked with their child, and vice versa. So I just want to read something that you wrote in your narrative that's on our website, specialneedscovid.com. You wrote, being a special needs parent always means juggling many responsibilities in the air, but being a special needs parent in a global pandemic adds many more responsibilities to the plate. Ensuring that classes were attended, technology needs were in place to support learning for my deaf children, making sure therapy services were coordinated and provided, all while trying to work full time, either from the office or from home. We struggled with our children's anxiety of the unknown, their unwillingness to wear masks, their disappointment that playdates were canceled and playgrounds were closed. We have learned a lot through this experience, but most of all, I have learned the meaning of resilience. I just wanted to share that because while you were busy holding all of us up, that's what you had going on at home. And you did, you still went back and did all these things. Everyone's talking about what, you know, you did to make sure our kids could wear masks, and you did all of that. Well, this was happening in your life. So I just wanted to give you a moment to kind of talk about what you felt and learned in COVID and what your hopes are because of everything we saw.
So I'm going to echo Erik and have you just narrate all of my thoughts moving forward. You just brought an emotion to it that I didn't think I had in that writing. So thank you for that. Yeah, I totally agree with your sentiments that we all had to learn to play each other's roles. And being a special needs parent of 2 deaf children, I've always played that role of being, basically in the shoes of you, Bobby, right? Trying to get your child or your kids the best that they can achieve. So I've always balanced that piece in my professional life ever since I've had my children, and I think it's given me an extra layer of empathy. I've always thought I was a pretty empathetic person, but having 2 kids that are deaf has raised that level of empathy for the parents that I work with closely. So I think it helped us all bridge the gap. I couldn't imagine what it was like, for you, Bobby, to not see your son, right, during that close down, that shutdown period. I was able to go home to my kids and still juggle their needs and my professional needs, but I do agree, it brought us closer together on the continuum of how to best support the kids. So I think that was a huge unexpected win, out of a really anxiety-ridden situation, that we were able to see the silver lining of it and see the resiliency in the students, the adults that we serve, the parents, the professionals. I think I found more resiliency in myself than I thought I had. And I also think it fostered this collaboration. We always collaborated on a surface level, but I think this fostered a deeper collaboration now that we understood each other's roles better.
That strikes me as a very wonderful summation of what we've been trying to get at here, and I hesitate to say anything else that I'm going to mess it up, but I would like to throw it back for any final comments, any suggestions for moving forward. It sounds like you're really forward thinking to begin with, the both of you and your organization, and we've gotten a real good sense of that. For parents and for professionals who maybe don't feel like they're in the same place that you are, can you give us some closing words of advice?
I think that it's important to take a step back, right? Just as we were talking about, and take a step back and what's going to improve the quality of life and the level of independence of the students and the adults that we serve. And in order to figure that out, we have to work as a team that is working collaboratively and not just on paper. Not that, did we talk to the parents about this? Did we agree internally as a team or as a school team and a residential team? But really listen to each other and the needs of everyone on the team, and establish, some ways to move forward and to build those skills so that the student or the adult is ultimately benefiting with a greater level of independence and quality of life.
That's really wonderful to hear, and it just echoes what I've always thought and the points I've tried to make in some of my writings about applied behavior analysis, just in terms of how, contrary to the, I'm going to call it a myth, but let's call it a misconception, ABA doesn't do anything to remove someone's autonomy. It increases autonomy because it teaches skills so efficiently, and if I don't have skills, I don't have a choice. Once I know how to do something, now I can choose, I'm going to do it, I'm not going to do it. But until someone helps me to learn that, I really don't have a choice. And just the nature of what you've been discussing, it's really hammering home the need that we all need to work together, the parents, the professionals, and the individuals themselves. Where do they want to be? What do they want to be doing? What is going to be fulfilling for them? Let's make sure that our programming is addressing their desires and where they want to be and the skills they want to have. Let's incorporate everybody in this decision-making process, so it's not coming down from on high, so to speak, but a really nice collaborative effort. So that all, again, just strikes me as so positive and so hopeful moving forward. Erik, can I throw it to you to close us out?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking all different ideas as you were talking there. You know, I think for us, people have had what we've gotten is that people have had a different experience, particularly related to applied behavior analysis, and that at times it wasn't necessarily done in that dignified way, in a televisable way, and that's what we're really looking to shift. I think if people are looking to reach out, or parents are struggling with where should I go, I'm interested in something else, there is an ABA model that is what we're calling today's ABA. It's much more relationship based. It has that safety component, and it's something that's dignified, that you should be able to see what's going on. It shouldn't be done behind a closed door, and that it's accessible. So, you know, I would, you know, certainly there's a lot of different groups on the internet, but I would, you know, contact anyone certainly on, you know, the this podcast here could help provide referrals or put you in the right direction. But I'd also recommend, you know, one that's been a big impact on our program is work by Dr. Greg Hanley and his FDF behavioral consultants, as well as the practical functional assessment.com. I think that's it. But those are out there. They have some general ideas around what we're trying to do, and I think really captures that. So I think those would be the areas that find a professional that can help you navigate these things if you're feeling lost. There are people, the folks from the Essentials for Living have been great for us as well with helping us, getting us on path to looking at what's the right assessment and what's the right skills that we should be working on. And I think that's ultimately is the key. Get working on those skills early that are going to be a game changer as your child becomes older. So that as they move through puberty, they have some different skills in place that are going to help them navigate it. That's often a challenge. If you don't feel like that's the right service that you have in place, then I would go out and look for others that can provide that service for you. But don't give up. And I think Bobby nailed that. You got to keep hope alive that there are other professionals that can assist you with it. There are other resources, and seek out. Don't give up on your child, and don't give up on your hopes that you have for your child's life and where it's going to go.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. And Bobby, any final thoughts for us?
Thank you for being on today, and thank you for representing a model of what this should look like. I look forward to watching more of what you both do.
Thank you. And this model, again, just especially at this time of COVID, when some services have been interrupted and when things have been tricky, obviously it's incumbent upon us to go for the most efficient and most supportive model we have. And it sounds like these are some very good resources to do that. So again, I thank you both very much. We will probably be asking you back in the not too distant future, just because I know there's so much more for us to go through. So again, I thank you very much.
All right,
Thank
then.
you.
And I want to say, if there's a quote I can offer to conclude this very uplifting COVID conversation, I think I'd like to end with Mara's quote of "What else is possible?" So I think that's a great way to end this today. So that concludes today's COVID conversation with Bobby Rogers and Dr. Bobby Newman. We want to thank Dr. Erik Jacobson and Dr. Mara Vanderzell for joining us today. And just remind you to please make sure to visit our website at specialneedscovid.com to see our other episodes, as well as to read Mara's narrative, as well as narratives of some of our other participants in this process. So thank you, everybody, today, and we hope everybody stays safe and healthy.
Thank you.